Yes, I did move out of this road. That's a great West State. That's great. Oh, yeah, that's a great one. I was walking right out the other day.
There we go. There we go.
It's okay.
More realistic. Project manager for me. Been working with us for 3 months ago.
And you. What does, yeah, I'll continue.
Touch base. Reside in character. Just take tests.
Everybody needs a good right-hand person.
But not
Brain, I need brain.
He's a male. His name is Adrian.
How's the baby?
Boy, almost 4 and tearing it up. Oh man. How's your college professor?
Oh, you talking to me?
The one that your daughter's the one that's yeah. But I feel like she's old enough to be teaching now.
She'll be 22.
I know.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And your youngest is he
He'll be 16.
junior?
He'll be 16 now. He's a sophomore. He'll be a sophomore.
Yeah, this sophomore. Okay. That's crazy.
It is. It happened so fast. It's like blink.
I know.
I mean, it's time to go back. Yeah, no, it's summertime especially.
We're gonna get started in a few minutes here. We just say like 10:30 to 11 for a little reception, have some food. We may start a little bit earlier because we want to get people home before it gets too hot. I think we'll be all right. Talitha didn't move at all, so I think that's it.
You're right. See the report. Did you get a streaming link from Leslie yet?
I haven't.
No. Okay. Let me see if I can get
Is it going to be on YouTube site?
I would assume so.
Yeah.
Let me double check. Yeah.
Because I need to send it to, I need to send it to the board.
You never know. What are you remembering today? What are your memories today?
I'm hoping that
Oh, okay. And what, had your mother stayed in that area?
Well, she when I came, I had to put it in the because I had to go back. So stop moving, tired of the job.
Yeah.
I was doing every day. But I thought, I'm not going to do that every day. She said, you're the only one. She said, you got to take care of yourself.
That's
You
right.
take care
It's a
of her.
balance, isn't it? That's right.
But my family stayed in the house. And I'm back in that house. But if I can give them information, I just
But you probably do have a lot of memories. Yeah. And then, yeah. And then when you came back, I mean, maybe you had been visiting your mom periodically, but when you moved back, so much has probably changed too, so you went through that.
Here.
there's another building.
We were talking about
Oh, where the public works.
Yeah, it's totally.
Yes.
I'm great. How are you doing? I know. Man, you do too, though. Have you come by lately? I was in Minnesota. I was actually stuck in a Chicago airport.
We have a microphone.
Seven and a half hours. I missed my flight off from Minneapolis by like 2 minutes.
So we're here. Oh, okay.
You gotta watch it online.
I love
I
the
got
town,
you.
but I hate the airport. So, how are you doing?
It's good to see you. It's good to see you. Yeah.
Hanging on, keep it on.
Right. Hang here.
So we're there. But yeah.
Yeah.
He's gonna do some work. We'll be busy with.
Yeah.
I know.
Is it outdoors? Was it being
I hope we yeah, I was telling
Hi.
some people don't vote.
I've been told by you all that I'm supposed to.
Yeah, it's inside, man.
If it's inside, yeah, but I saw, that's I got some, I can't do it. Maybe later on in the evening, but
Oh, great idea.
I don't do well in the heat.
Not lazy.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, I'll do that. Yeah, and if I get it wrong, you can correct me and I'll fly.
We're just waiting on Andrew. She said she needed another minute.
Perfect.
Good to go, Andrew? Okay. All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank y'all for coming out this morning. We're gonna bring up the star. I'm not the star. Believe that. Stars are coming up later. But this is a project that has been being worked on for many years around the 10th and Page Oral History Project, and there's been a lot of information captured, a lot of stories, and I was able to kind of listen in on some of that work and to help kind of help us get to the kind of the finish line with regards to, well, not even the finish line, it's really like the first step. And I see this is like step one, because this story needs to go far and wide. And I'm telling you, if you don't laugh today, I will be surprised, because I've listened to this thing many, many times, and it's just really good. And the way things will go today is that we'll watch the clip of, and it's an audio project, so keep that in mind. You're not going to be watching video, you're going to be listening to audio. But it is an audiogram, so you'll see some stuff on the screen. Oh, by the way, my name is Sarad Davenport, and I'm from Charlottesville, and I've been working in community service. I came on this project a couple of years ago. But before we kind of get into it and do listening, and then some Q&A with some folks who are in the project, and some talk back to you all, because some of you are from the community, you may have things to share to fill in some gaps, things we missed. I want to bring up a couple of people. So Dr. Andrew Douglas from the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center, who is a major part of this project. In fact, she'll probably talk about it. The work inevitably will be out here. And then also Matthew from Virginia Humanities, Virginia Humanities, Jefferson School African American Heritage Center, co-partners on this project. Just want to bring them up to say a few words before we get started, and then we'll get into the program. So, all right, whichever one go first.
What you? I got a rock. You get first.
Give it up for Andrea in the house.
I'm here to welcome you. You all are sitting in a space that represents the expansion of the work that we do. We took over the space with the intention of using it to teach and using it to find another intimate place where our community could come together. The auditorium is our central gathering place, but not every conversation belongs in that big room. We've been having a series of conversations that we hope you all feel more comfortable to speak. This project, when we began to become involved in this project, this is a linchpin project for us for a number of reasons. Our goal, working with my colleague Jordan Yeager, is to recreate the African American community in real time. To give people an opportunity to understand what does it mean for a community to become such an integral part to building this city. And how can we make people re-engage with those facts so that as we think about what our future looks like, the stories that are most important, that are at the bedrock of our place, become those stories that are like the guideposts for how we move forward into the future, right? We all know you can't understand where you've been or where you're going unless you fully engage with where you've been. And I think this Kemp and Page project allows us to do that. We're building something called the Center for Local Knowledge, which is what this project will do. Part of it is an oral history database, repository, where eventually you'll all be able to come and hear your own story. You'll all be able to say, hey, that story, that's our story. Maybe we don't want that story out there anymore. It's the place where we give back your power that is inherent in your history. So I'm really excited, as Sarah talks about the future. I'm excited to see how we build it, because we're going to build it neighborhood by neighborhood, driven by the people who live in those neighborhoods, right? So even though we have this in our repository, every single one of you then has the opportunity to say, what do we do with it, right? We're not making those decisions. We hope that you want those decisions made. Okay? So thank you all for coming. Matt, what's your
Dr. Douglas. Thank you, Dr. Douglas. I'm Matthew Gibson. I'm the Executive Director of Virginia Humanities. I always get asked the question, well, what are the humanities? It's kind of an interesting question, because it's hard to answer sometimes. But I think fundamentally, what we do, the purpose of what we do, is about community well-being. So community well-being is made up of lots of different kinds of things. Access to healthcare, access to education, access to good jobs, all that stuff. It's also about stories, right? I think if we don't have stories and meaning making in our communities, we can't be a well-made, healthy community. And I think that's where the tools of the humanities try to come in, is to support that meaning making project. And I think this is a great example of the work that the humanities really does try to do. And I think, going back to what Dr. Douglas said, I mean, to think about the importance of the stories that this project has helped to record and document and hopefully preserve, is for the posterity of our future generations. I think we always live in history. History's always with us. It's not go away. It's not sort of stuck in the past. And I think the fact that you all have contributed to this just means that your children, your grandchildren's children will have access to things that maybe they wouldn't have access to otherwise, certainly not in our history. And I think that brings them to connect to community in a deeper way they ever would be able to through their normal schooling process, if you will. But we're really excited to be able to partner with Jefferson School, with all of you, certainly with Talitha Howard and Mr. James Bryant on this project, and all of you who participated in it. One just brief question, just point about the people who did participate. If you would like to get your portrait taken as part of that archive, sort of connect the face with the voice in the archive, my colleague Pat Jarrett will be available after this conversation and certainly in the future when you want to try to do that. So please look him up. This project actually would not have gotten off the ground, certainly without the community, but also always takes money too. And the Ford Foundation, Darren Walker was a huge supporter of this project, which is terrific, as was the Charles Fund, which is a more localized fund foundation in the area. So thanks to them. But again, thanks to all of you. And last words before I turn it over to Leah and Mr. Bryant. I don't think so.
All right.
But thank you all.
All right. Thank you, Matt.
Well, and as we move forward, one more thing. We moved from Edna into town because we wanted to be, even though we're a statewide organization, we wanted to be in support of the community in which we are headquartered. So as you think about projects in the future, we hope you see Virginia Humanities as a trustworthy collaborator, right? In a resource for the project. So thank you. Sorry.
No problem. All right, y'all ready? Here we go. Make sure television is on. Maybe.
Turned off. It's not turned on.
Turn it on. Oh, here we go. So you got to get out of the way and let the people that know what they're doing do their thing.
My name is Fazina Howard, and I'm a resident of Charlottesville. I'm still living in the same house that I grew up in, and I'm not gonna tell my age, but it's been years. My grandfather was there, my mother's there, now I'm there.
And my name is Talitha Howard. Zena is my mother, and I was born and raised and lived on Anderson Street majority of my life.
I wanted to capture what it was like to live in the 10th and Page community for my son, my youngest, who is 9. He was not able to experience the village that I was a part of, and I wanted to capture those stories and those moments. So my youngest son, will know what it feels like to live in a community where it was a village.
I can guarantee you, I've been on every house on Page Street, on up to Anderson Street, on up to West Street. I've been in every house at least once in my life.
Everybody knew everybody. Everybody watched out for everybody. Everybody's home pretty much was your home.
Because I pretty much knew most of the people in the neighborhood. I remember Mr. Turtle. Mr. Turtle's hands were almost twice as big as mine. Strong old man. He was an old man when I knew it. But my dad used to say, he said, don't let Mr. Turtle brag you because he'll crush them with big hands and his.
There was a lady by the name of Miss Beulah. She had a pear tree in her yard. And I remember us going over into Miss Buell's yard, taking the pears off the tree, and she would yell and scream and say, "Stop taking those pears off my tree."
Big Mama, everybody called her Big Mama on the street because, you know what I'm saying? Big Mama was everybody Big Mama. And I say all us, because there was like quite a large family.
We were more closer. We were family, it was neighborhoods, you know. It was family. Miss Eleanor them lived on the corner. She had a lot of children, but people were homemakers then.
Vivian's mom would bake bread and send it over once a week. Thursday was bread day. And my oldest brother said she was selling some pan of bread and said it wasn't many in that pan. He would almost fight over that hot bread when he came over. That was Mrs. Morris.
We had mom and pop stores, I guess you would call it. If you coming from Main Street, we had W&W Market, Martin Store. You had Mr. Durham's Market, and then you also had Miss Susan Brown's store. You could go in and get, little groceries. Kids would hang in that store and getting candy, potato chips, popcorn, gum. That's the way it was.
It was Dr. Cole from local dentist. And my grandma's first cousin. And then we had Dr. Garrett on Main Street. And then Dr. Ralph Brown on the corner of Charlton Avenue and Rose Hill Drive. They were all black doctors. Yes, sir.
We had banks in our neighborhood. We had a bakery right across from Washington Park where you could smell fresh bread being baked.
And then there were churches. We had our own churches, our black churches in the area. Like 3 or 4 black churches, and they were busy. Like so many people in our neighborhood went to the same churches, and we walked to Sunday school, and you come across people that were on their way to Sunday school, whether it was your church or First Baptist Church or Mount Zion or Ebenezer or Zion Union, going to church, walking to church and talking to people on the way to church.
We were outside kids, to play the games, like hide and go seek. And you couldn't stray too far away from home too late because there was a bell that goes off at 9 o'clock at the fire department. So if you ain't at home by the time gone, you was in it.
We called kickball right in that street. Right in that street. All day long. And didn't notice, but we used to have 10 shows. The boys were making out of Crocosat right over in that yard. And my stage name was Dorothy Lamore. Anyhow, all of us had a movie star name. And the boys built the tents, see. Made a little stage and I danced. Oh, damn, on stage. That's the truth.
We couldn't wait till we go outside. It's such a difference. Our neighborhood consisted of Anderson and West Street. That was our main 2 neighborhoods in the Monticello area. Because they had stopped using all their old milk trucks and they just left them there. That was our clubhouse. We turned those milk trucks into a clubhouse. We took cardboard boxes, blankets, food. We had a good time. Just a good time. You know where all the kids were at by looking for the bouncers. Where the bouncers found up at, that's your house they at. And that's where you had one of those cell phone text messages where you at. You go outside, look for the bikes. And then you know what house everybody gonna meet up at.
And you know what? If you went to somebody, they're gonna feed you. Mm-hmm. My mother used to say to them, when y'all go anywhere, always pay your rent. Because if you sit around somebody, black people house long enough, they get sick of you. Son, do you want a sandwich? And you go on now. No, nobody invited us. But if I went over, I ate just as much as Miss Jackson as I ate in here. And me and Sheila were just talking about that Sunday. Sheila was a little girl when I used to go over there. And the first time I ever ate cauliflower and then little ice cold green cabbage, Brussels sprout. And Miss Eleanor used to make them in a casserole. And I used to eat them over every Sunday had. I used to eat. And I learned a lot of stuff from her. And she put things didn't sound her like they do now. Girl, you can't leave dishwasher so long that starts stinking. she always kept a thing of butter melted on it. And you know what you lose? You use less butter. If you have a little brush it on your toes. And I couldn't humps.
Miss Bertha up on the corner of West and 10, she used to pay me and my cousin Monica to go collect blueberries, blackberries, and dandelions, and she could make fruit pies and wine. And we did that for Miss Bertha for year after year. That was our job in the summer. We knew we were going to help her with that. Getting her preserves. And it was fun to just be in her house all day, helping her do whatever. And while you're there, she's talking to you about life. So it's life lessons that you need as a child from your seniors with the wisdom. And it gives you a respect for the elderly.
Both my parents were working parents, so I felt comfortable. My parents felt comfortable enough that once I got home, there was either Miss Queenie next door to me or Miss Morrison across the street from me. And trust me, one of them saw me come across the street, come home from the bus stop. Or if I left my key at school, or I thought I lost my key, I would just go to Miss Queenie's house. And, to be honest, some days I would just say I left my key at school. And instead go to Miss Queenie's house because she gave me snacks. And I got to go to her house and she gave me graham crackers with cinnamon and sugar on them. And we didn't have cinnamon and sugar graham crackers. She did. And she used to have chilled glasses in her refrigerator for the ginger ale, which I thought was really cool. So I went to her house for an hour and a half.
And I never forget Miss Bias. Used to live on that street. She was good to me. I didn't have no idea I was going to college. And Mama said, "You're going to college." I said, "I got to get my act together." And I told Miss Bias, I said, because I had to take an examination, she saw my help you. And she did. And I got in college. She did. She really did. A lot of them like me from her, but I liked her. She was my best.
It took me until I was 13 years old to figure out how I could be across town, fighting and carrying on, and leave there and get home. And my grandmother or my mother was standing on the porch waiting on me with a switch. And I couldn't figure out how in the world they didn't know that I've been over on 5th Street fighting. Until one day, I beat Ma Bell home. The phone rang. And I answered the phone as I usually did. And everybody answered said, "Mom?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." Let me do the fell. "Yes, ma'am." I handed the phone. And as soon as my mother hung the phone up, she said, you might as well go on out there and get the switch because you've been across town fighting." And that's how I knew that the telephone was faster than feet.
I used to go visit Ray Anthony right up the street. And I was late at night, past dark. I didn't make it home before the street light came on. So Ray's mom would call my mom and say she on her way. And sometimes they would call another neighbor like Miss Mason and Miss Turl. And as I'm coming down the street, the neighbors are calling my mom, "And she on the way now."
Most of the kids that we grew up with had passed away. I guess I'm one of the old survivors. They, as we got older, we got married, and our paths in life changed. And we didn't see each other that much. Some of them left Charleston and never came back.
There are very few families left that have been here, say, 60 or more years.
A lot of them that were here growing up, a lot of them have passed away, and their children either decided to sell homes and not stay in them.
Most of the people, as the children grew up, they moved away because there was nothing for them to do here.
10th Page Street is one of the last black neighborhoods in Charlottesville, so it's close to the University of Virginia. So people are just coming in and investing in rehabbing all these old homes and moving into the neighborhood. So it's very gentrified, and a lot of the neighbors, when they move in, you really don't know them because they kind of stay to themselves. And if I'm sitting on my front porch, which is traditional in black neighborhoods, you sit on your front porch. And back in the day, you knew everybody kind of down the street, whether they were blowing the horn, going up and down the street, or your neighbor across the yard, you know, or your next door neighbor, but none of that goes on now. You hardly know anybody. This is a beautiful neighborhood. It still has elements of the old days because there's still some of the elders that still live in the neighborhood that's been here for years. And that's my only concern at this point is that with all the gentrification and improvement in the neighborhood, that we do not price our elders and those on fixed incomes out of their homes. They will be able to find programs that will enable people if they need financial assistance or tax assistance to pay their taxes.
I would like for the neighborhood to go back to being a more family-oriented neighborhood where everyone knows each other.
I just feel that any black-owned homes should stay within the family.
Look, my thing is I would like us not to lose any more property. I'd like for it to stay a mixture, but the way it's going is going to be completely changed.
This is where I grew up, and doing my whole teaching career, 9 years of it, I lived right in the neighborhood I was born and raised in. Very proud of 10th and Page Street, and I hope that we can, I hope this interview, along with others, will be preserved so that young people can sit back and listen to these interviews and understand what it was like growing up in this neighborhood. It was just like a community, a village. Everybody looked out for one another.
It would be nice if the community could come together and for the younger generation show what a village would look like. That'll never be the same. It wouldn't be the same. Never say never. It wouldn't be the same. We know that. It would be hard because it would go back to what they have seen, what they know. So growing up, it was a family. So it was what my grandmother experienced, what my grandmother knew, to show what my mom experienced, to be able for me to show my kids. So if I never experienced or knew it, I can't show my kids that. So it's pretty much working that cycle.
That's why you wanted to record the story.
Yeah. So it's the generation curse. Somebody has to break it. And somebody has to want to break it. And it's doing the homework. And it can't just rely on just one person. It has to rely on everybody. That's when the unity comes in, the village comes in.
Y'all can clap, cry, whatever. Wasn't that good? Yeah. That's just a good piece. There's hours of stories that have been collected. That's just 15 minutes of it. So, first of all, before we, have our speakers come up, I wanted to just see kind of who's in the house. Raise your hand, and everybody else, look, if you have a history in the community 20 plus years. So I want everybody to see people who have. All right, let's go 25. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. 25. And you can count generations before you too. 30, 40, 50, 60. 70.
They count the generation before you?
Yep, before you too. 70. 80. 90. 100. Between 90 and 100 years. Right here in this room today, people who have connections almost a whole century in that community and are represented in this Oral History Project. I just want y'all to see that. Like how far the history goes back, 100 years, right? So with that said, I'm gonna bring up our panelists today, and my hope is that it'll be like a talk back. We'll ask them questions. Hopefully, there are people out there. We got people with 100 years of history, so you'll have stuff to say too, and maybe have questions from others. But I'm going to introduce our folks. First, I'll introduce Mr. James Bryant, a resident of 10th Page, former not only school board member, school board chair. Not only that, worked in guidance at the Charlottesville High School. He was my 6th grade music teacher at Walton. So I've known Mr. Bryant for a long time, and just a anchor, a staple in the community that people know, and help us remember who we are wherever we are. So just let's give it up for Mr. Bryant as he comes forward. And the next person I'm going to bring up is Howard, who known. I get real relaxed, and I start talking in my what they call Ave, talking my African American vernacular English. But I've known Talita for a long time. She's always got a smile on her face. We joke. I'm telling you, you want somebody that's a styling comedian that's gonna laugh all the time. She does amazing work in the community, and you heard her voice. She is responsible for a lot of putting this work together, doing the interviews. She's doing a lot of great things in the community. Also, I know she had a big Black History Project at Walker this year. I mean, it was amazing. Brought people from the highest levels in this community, from university, all together to kind of create a program for the students so they understand history and Black history. But my friend, my neighbor, come on up, Talita. So, said a little bit about them, but I'll start with Talita. Tell us a little bit more about your participation in this project. How did it all get started? Why did it get started? And we heard some of that, but what were some of the things that happened during the project? So tell us about the project. You got to speak up to for the people online.
I was connected with Allison. Just talk about the neighborhood, and I just told her how I wanted to just capture just the history behind the page. I told her I wanted to just talk about the neighborhood. There's a lot of history here. I wanted to just talk about how we don't talk about the good stuff in the neighborhood. There's always so much negative, and I wanted to be able to share the stories about what goes on where I live in, and I wanted to just have everybody know the good stuff, and how I want everybody to know that it is good in the neighborhood, and it was out of that.
So let's talk about this though. Does the neighborhood sometimes get a bad rap? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So the 10th Page neighborhood is not known for anything. It's known for this. It's just not known for anything. Drugs, gun violence, but it's good. It's a good one. I grew up in it. Her mom. So it's positive, but we don't ever capture those things. And so I wanted to capture those stories. Like I said, my son, he's 10 now, but when I grew up, it was a village, and it takes a village to raise a child. For me, I wanted everybody to know what it was like growing up in that neighborhood from when I was young. So that's what we want to.
Because, we all know that a lot of times in communities, you don't always hear all of the good things that are happening. The things that make it good. You only hear the bad. It gets reinforced. And if we don't tell our own story, then it won't get told. So this is part of telling the story. So Mr. Bryant, you can follow up on that if you want, but just wondering, like, what excerpts from what we heard today or on the project, what stood out to you?
But what stood out to me was, I was almost there to tears. It's like listening to the various testimonies. Because as a child, growing up on 11th Street, there were a lot of elders who lived on that street or in the community, 10th Page area. And it just brought back memories growing up, being creative in the games that we played, going to school right here at Jefferson School. The schools were still segregated. And going home to a community where everybody knew everybody. If you needed an onion, your next door neighbor had it, you got it. Everyone looked out for everybody in the community. And they mentioned my Aunt Bertie in the video. And I can remember as a child, that was my grandmother's sister, going to Venable Field and picking the down lines so that she could make her down line wine. And I tell you, she would keep it in the basement of the house. And every now and then she would go down and take out a jug and there it is. There it is. And you had to almost like, it's down like this. No, I'm not doing that anyway. So that stood out. And I think the thing that also we need to also capture in this narrative about 10th and Page Street, when Vinegar Hill was raised, and all those people were placed in West Haven, which is the oldest housing project in the city, built in 1963. I lived there for 10 years, from the time from 1965 to 1975. It was sort of almost like an island, it was a community within itself. But in actuality, it was also part of the 10th and Page Street neighborhood, West Haven. And so we had to sort of kind of fight for, acknowledgement, even though we lived in the projects, quote unquote, we were also still a part of Vinegar Hill. And imagine all these, 10th and Page Street neighborhood, imagine all these people who were just displaced and were put there on Hardy Drive, which was formerly called Oxy Road. They didn't know anybody in the 10th and Page Street because I grew up on 11th Street. And then I also grew up in Hardy Drive and I currently live on 10th Street where I've been there for 43 years. So I've been predominantly all my whole life in the 10th and Page Street neighborhood. But you think about that, West Haven is also a part of our community as well. And we have to also continue to embrace those folks who live in Hardy Drive.
Yeah, for some of you who don't know, I used to be the executive director of City of Promise, and our primary neighborhoods were 10th and Page, Star Hill, and West Haven. And we had to, kind of work through that narrative a lot of like the separation, because people would often speak to things separately. We found that we have to be intentional about talking together from a unification perspective, because what happens in one neighborhood affects the other, and vice versa. And if you're not talking together, then things can get confusing. So I remember that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tell us more about your memorable moments in the neighborhood. Why? Why did you feel safe?
We used to.
Go ahead and tell it.
It's way different. I'm just gonna say that. Used to ride our bikes up the street. Well, it used to be a bank where Region 10 was. So me and my cousin Karen, we used to take our bikes to the parents' afterwards, just racing each other. Going down alleyways where Miss Hawkins used to live on West Street. She used to press our hair. So we used to go down the little alleyways.
What kind of press did they use them hot cones?
Yes, the hat cone, the hat cones. Used to go and you talked about the pear tree. So we had, what's the show? Is it on, wasn't it Apple Tree? Albemarle. Albemarle, wasn't it Apple, was it Apple Tree? Pear tree? We used to go and, kind of get some pears too. Those were moments that we used to do too. We never got caught. Just being a kid is what I remember. It's so many memories, but just actually being able to be a kid and feeling safe, knowing that we had neighbors who actually would look out for us, and genuinely care about us.
You feel like it's different now? What's different?
Yes, so we could be out on a porch late at night, and it was okay. We could leave our windows down on our car, leave our car doors unlocked, and every day would still be in our car, and nobody would take our car. We could leave anything on our front porch, and it would still be there the next day. Doors could be open all night long. And don't have to worry about nobody coming into your house. Just things like that. Neighbors will look out for us. I had an Aunt Helen who lived down the street on 8th Street. And so, again, could go on West Street, 8th Street. Just go to other kids' houses and just know that if anything happened in between my transition, the people who would look out for me would check on me. Are you okay? Did you fall? Did you hurt yourself? Just, they generally cared about my well-being. And it wasn't so much of, what are you doing? But if I did something, it was out of, are you okay? Not so much of, what are you doing? So it was just the, people cared about me. So those are the memories that I cherish the most. The village, just people really cared about me. Being able to play outside, and like I said, feeling safe. Kickball games. We did have a block party. That was fun. But just being able to be a kid. My son, he doesn't know what it feels like to just be able to be a kid outside and enjoy those moments with his friends.
How about you, Mr. Brown? What do you remember?
Well, I talked about this extensively when Jory several years ago. So I'll start back a little older than me. So I'll start back on 11th Street, 1960. One of the things I remember everybody who lived on that street. And the lady next door to us, Mrs. Helen, Mrs. Dutch, she baked cookies for us at Christmas time. And I was one of 7 children. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. So of course, I left school. My chore when I got home was to assist my brothers chopping the wood. My mother cooked on the wood stove, chopping the wood, hauling it all the way upstairs, and that was a given. That was every day before we could go out and play. Our responsibility was to chop the wood and so my mother could cook dinner. And then we were allowed to go outside, and there was a fence that went all the way around Middle School because we weren't allowed to go into the field to play. School was still segregated, but we were able to find a way to climb the fence in the afternoon and dig a little trench to go up under the fence. And so we would go over to the field and play. We were very defined, so I said, well, just have to rest, we got to find somewhere to play. So we did that, Martin Ford, Ford Avenue, but we ended up in the field playing football, baseball, whatever we wanted to do. And then, of course, when we got dark, Mama would price the window up. And she would call us in. It's time to come in. And she would call us from the oldest to the youngest. So we knew when that window came up, she started yelling, it's time to come in. Get ready for school, get ready for school. All the neighbors, the lady across the street, she was our babysitter. So my mother followed, they would go out for a dance or something. She would come over, and she is still living today. She lives in Oakland, California, Patricia. She lived across the street. Linda Allen, another neighbor, she lives in Bear, Delaware. So I kept up with all these people, all the Dudley sisters, they're all deceased now, but their descendants all live in the Washington, Maryland area. So I knew everybody. So it's our responsibility as kids to look out for the elders in the neighborhood. Miss Virgin, where Chief Hodges lived, her name is Miss Virgin, she lived in that house, and we would knock on the door and ask if they could go to school, or Miss Bell. We always looked out for the elders. And 11th Street was a hockey street back in the day. It was a very vibrant street. Everybody knew everybody. It was just like one big, close family. Downstairs was Dora Brooks' mother-in-law, Miss Virginia Brooks, and Miss Laura Bryant, my cousin. They lived downstairs. We didn't have a telephone. I didn't get a telephone in my home until I was in 6th grade. My parents couldn't afford it. So we always had to put in fast phone. We called it at that time, the number was only 5 digits. It wasn't 7, it was 6. So, call my grandmother, whatever. So I had fond memories of growing up, but also in the middle neighborhood, just the fact that when I ride past the Google Guinness Academy and I see that open area of the fence, it just warms my heart, because when I grew up, we weren't allowed to play in that field. We just literally were defined. And we just decided we're going to jump the fence and we won't play it, jump over the fence to come back. Because my yard was right behind it. So, but when I look at the village a lot, we grew up revering and respecting our elders. My mother was an only child, my father was an only child, so I grew up around older people. Either they were my grandmother's sister brothers or my grandfather's sister brothers. So I grew up around elders. So I just have this, I revere elderly people. Well, I guess I'm close to the elderly. I grew up around elderly people. And I learned that old school and that respect and the village and just really being connected to that and trying, and a lot of that affected me in my teaching career, because I taught my children to be respectful of each other. We all may not have, we have the crime of everything, but when they were taught, when they came to my classroom, you want to be respectful of each other. I would not allow them to talk negative about another student. That was a big one when you came into my classroom. And I think a lot of that was the way I was brought up and taught, in terms of child in 11th Street, and then, of course, Harding Drive was during my formative years, from the time I was in 6th grade until I was a junior in college. And that was a learning and getting to know us from the Hill neighborhood. That was a whole nother experience. But here again, I developed friendships that has lasted for years. And a good example is that when at Mel's funeral, when there was a section for all of us who grew up in Harding Drive, and Linda asked us to stand up. You were there, and I mean, it was just like one big figure. I went around and hugged everybody, because a lot of people had not seen me. But we were all very close, even in the Harding Drive neighborhood. So I just have a lot of the village, Washington Park. I can go into that. About, swimming in the pool, and having Snoopy. You couldn't get in the pool if you were a certain height. The young kids, she not allowed the young kids to swim with the older kids. So there was a little thing on the thing, and she would measure your height. Nope, can't swim. You got to swim with the young kids. So she was just Washington Park, and the Dairy Market, and the bakery. Also, the Bowles had a store on West Street. I can remember as a kid coming to John School and go to Mr. Inge's store right up here on Main Street and get candy. I remember Mr. Inge would say, "All right, boys and girls, don't get in trouble. You know that bubblegum and candy." Because we had the old-fashioned desk that would come up, and so when the teacher would look, we'd put a piece of bubblegum. But yeah, so it's just a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember some of that too. I think I got the back end of it because I had a grandmother that lived in Westlake, but I also had a grandmother that lived on Henry Avenue. So people don't understand kind of culturally. You were talking about that, like the Venable neighborhood. Really, we didn't see those barriers at that time. It was like from probably Main Street to Madison and to 14th Street to probably 4th Street was like you just kind of flowed into each other. Because I can remember, my grandmother on Henry Avenue. Henry Avenue felt like I was staying in the neighborhood too. You got to cross Preston though, but you still kind of in the neighborhood. People knew each other. I mean, I remember one time I was on the tracks, and the news beat me home. I'm serious, like, because wasn't supposed to be on the tracks. And the news beat me home. So, you know, what they're saying is, I can remember as young as I am, I might be a little bit older than you, Talika, but we about the same age. But we still had some of those, you know, same things going on. I want to ask one more for you all, and then open it up to others that might want to speak, say something, or have questions. Okay? Question for you all. So many things have changed. But how do you think that some type of legacy can continue? What needs to be done? I know in the community talking about taxes, it's a real big thing, you know. But what other things can be done to kind of preserve the legacy of the community? You can start. Well, yeah, you start, Mr. Brown, and then
I think what needs to happen, we already know this is a nationwide phenomenon, gentrification. And I've been on 10th Street for 43 years. And I have seen the elders that were living on 10th Street when I moved there in 1981, they're all gone. Be Morris and be the Banks. Yeah. I think Mrs. Hayden is probably the only one that there's stores up there that's still living in that block. Everyone else is new. All the properties have gotten away from the families. And what people, I think, right, good example in Hampshire, next to me, that house flipped. And my God, I mean, the tax is going to go sky high. Yeah. That's right next door to you. I think about, I can go back and sit on my porch and I just think about elders I used to talk across the street. We would gather in the community. And, I have an alley in my backyard. And people would be cooking up in the alley for the 4th of July. It was just, we went from house to house eating and having a good time. I don't see that anymore. 4th of July is like, it's dead. Nobody, you know, I mean, it's like nobody's cooking out, you know, still the hamburgers and the hot dogs and the music, you know, in the backyard. None of that is going on. And I'm hoping, and I'm thinking myself as a homeowner, I don't have any children, so what do I do? I'm already thinking about what I need to do to keep my house, because I get letters and calls all the time, but people want to buy my house. And I'm thinking, okay, what niece or nephew I could leave my house to that will keep the house in the family. I've already lived there 43 years. I don't have another 43 years, but I'm already thinking in terms of what I can do to keep my home in the family. So I think it's so important. We've got to look out for our elders in the community. All the building. I think that's one of the reasons why we did an uprising with this latest, extension of their market. And we said, we also, I heard a lot of comments during that time at city council meetings about how they love it. We also love our neighborhood too. We want our neighborhood to also continue to be the neighborhood that somewhat that we remember as children. So with all the new building going on, we don't want all these monstrosities. When I think about the student housing on Main Street, hovering over Hardy Drive, it looks weird. And all the high rises, it's almost like in a big city. So we also, I think that we as a community, that we can continue to band together and expand the conversation so that we can also keep people in their homes that's affordable. There is no affordable housing in Charlottesville. People cannot afford to live here. I have friends who live in Atlanta, so they would love to come back home to Charlottesville to live. But they can't afford to move to Charlottesville. These people have moved away, went to school here, and and people are listening, people are watching, and they're all over the country. They're saying, wow, it's expensive to live in the city. So hopefully those of us who have property will continue to hold on to it and keep it the family. That's very important.
Thank you. Talika, same for you. Many things have changed, but how do you feel like the legacy can?
this conversation with my family, just to try to just educate them on this.
So talk to your family and keep the conversation going.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's thank them, y'all. Come on, y'all. Questions or comments do you have? Anybody want to stand up and say something or have a question? You got something? Oh, I can't. Go ahead.
I really want to say thank you for doing this. When I talk about bedrock community for us, it's a bedrock community because this is also the community that helped create the Jefferson School. And to hear Ms. Morrison, when I didn't get to say goodbye to her, she was my ride or die every single day. She helped me. And all the people, Mr. Denny's, every single one of those people are connected to building this place. And for the first 3 years, when I sat here by myself, they were the people who would come and do our sports for us. They were the people who would sit and tell everyone about what it was like to go to this school. So when I talk about what makes us successful, it's almost every single person that was on this oral history. So I really, really thank you for doing it because it really brought back a whole lot of memories for me. And all of them were very good ones. Okay.
And to expand on what you said, Dr. Douglas, when you think about it, this school, the high school, those who went up until 1951, and correctly Jordan by history's all, and then what's earlier was built. Think about it, and then those of us who came after 51, I started Jefferson School in 1960. The school was just segregated. And this was the hub for those of us who lived in the 10th and Pastry neighborhood, Vinegar Hill, and surrounding communities. This is our formative years. This is where we learned, how to be good students. We had great teachers. We didn't make probably didn't make as much as their white counterparts, but they were committed and they were dedicated. They lived in the community. And so we learned to revere and respect those teachers because they were a part of the fabric too. Not only the entrepreneurs that lived in the community, like you mentioned about the doctors. I remember Dr. Garrett, was moved back, black bag, making house visits back in the 60s. I don't remember Mr. Brown, and I remember Dr. Pose, but we had everything in this community. Entrepreneurs, doctors, and teachers.
Grocery stores.
And I remember Mr. Bo, and also Mr. Bowles store on West Street. You get a hamburger, hot dog. We had kindergartens. Michelle's grandmother ran a kindergarten on Anderson Street. So we had everything in the village. We didn't have to really go anywhere because we had everything. We had people who were invested in us. And every time I come into this building, I think about the first 5 years of my education experience was right here in this building. It made me who I am today. And this is why I became an educator because of the teachers here in this building. So thank you, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you, Talitha, for letting me know about this event, even though I think a couple of years ago I did an interview.
It's in there.
With, but living in the 10th and Page pretty much all my life, and still living in the house that my great-grandfather built for his family. There were 3 other properties. My whole block had family on it. And that in itself was my village, because I was not supposed to be here too far. Certainly couldn't go across the tracks. And as far as that I remember going was up to Gary and then started venturing up to Rosina's. But there was a time in my young adult when I started to read what I was seeing, the changes, the loss of, and I'll say the landscape, not just people and families, but also buildings that I remember seeing in businesses. And one in particular was the Carver Inn. So many people had no clue about that building. You don't hear it talked about, or the entertainment, the people that stayed there, the entrepreneurship that was going on in that space. All up Preston Avenue, Black businesses. The tunnel at the end of the street where I live used to be a throughway to downtown, Page Street. Continued right here on 4th Street. So when I started to see that kind of change, I used to think about that. I became very sad. So now I'm still living in this same house that I grew up in, looking at the ways in which I'm going to hold on to it and where it's going to go when I pass. So, but in retrospect to all of that, I had to come to terms of really getting to know my neighbors. Because there was a time that, you know, they people moving in, I don't know them, but I had to get to know them. I wanted them to get to know who I was. Because why not? That's what I knew. We knew our neighbors. And that was the neighborly thing to do. To speak and to have some type of interaction with one another. And I'm still very much a part of that. When I see a new face moving into a house, and I'll talk about the families that used to live in that house that they now own, if given the chance. Because sometimes people are interested, and who better to come to but then the people that are still present in the neighborhood. So, but I am very much a part of what's going on with the community development, trying to maintain a sense of the young generation, safety, if not change. We're talking about relief, some trees, you know, we're trying to, and at some point it's going to be the generation that we have here today, like Trenton, that's going to benefit from this, you know, hearing the stories, because that's how I gained them. Oh, I used to sit on the steps because there was no more chairs left on the porch and listen. So I really, when you said all of those years, the ones that hit, we are part of that because we heard their stories, and what we heard impacted us. You know, and sometimes I have to talk about things because I kept thinking that this was me, my perception as a child. Was it real? Or can I compare it to someone else's perspective like James's?
Thank
you.
Yeah, that's great.
I would be remiss if I did not. In our community, the church, let us have an amen. The church was the cornerstone of the community. My mother grew up Baptist, but I was baptized and confirmed as an Episcopalian until I moved my membership to Mount Zion over 20 years ago. But that little church, right on 10th and Grady, I was baptized in that church and confirmed by the bishop at the age of 15. So when Reverend Mitchell came to town, I think he started pastoring there in 1958. I joined their church in 1960. So the late Henry Mitchell was very prominent in the civil rights struggle, and Mrs. Mitchell's wife, they were my godparents. So I grew up Episcopalian. My mother were a Baptist. But think about Ebenezer Baptist Church, Mount Zion. The churches were the cornerstone. First Baptist Church on West Main Street. All those churches I performed in over the years. Once they knew I could sing until 10 years of age, I was thrown into the choir. But the church, along with the business, that was the cornerstone. We can find our refuge in the church on Sunday morning. especially those of us who are still fighting that battle of segregation. But I think about our mothers who left UVA Hospital back in the 50s who were relegated to the basement in the segregated maternity ward. I could go on and on, but I have to say the church was our refuge on Sunday mornings. And Vivian, I think your mother, if I'm not mistaken, was one of the organists at Mount Zion back in the day. And so Vivian grew up on 9th Street. So I could think, and Mr. Ed, your grandfather owned the store, West End. I could go on and on and on. It was just a wonderful time. Yes, there were struggles, but we, as the village, they kept us somewhat isolated. They really did. And they taught us. And like Michelle said, we sat, because back in those days when old folks were talking, you didn't talk. That would be considered disrespectful. Right, Viv? That would be disrespectful. And you can sit like you're playing your little game or whatever, or any creative, whatever you want to do. But you were listening, but you didn't say anything, because then you were quickly told, stay in the child's play. That's what the old folks told you back then. But you were absorbing those stories. And I can just remember going to church, Sunday school and church, and just learning the stories of the elders in the church. So yeah, we have to, that was also a part of our community, that there was those churches all surrounded in close proximity.
Zion Union, and then I would always
Zion Union, yes.
I would always hear about Camp Faith. That's all I ever heard.
I went to
Camp Faith.
I went to Camp Faith.
Camp Faith.
Yes.
So Reverend Henry Mitchell was the one that started Camp Faith, which was a summer camp, right?
Yeah.
For all of the young people
in the north,
community.
in the northwest area.
Yeah, and they took y'all somewhere. Where did they take?
Earlysville.
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 Take all the kids from the community.
Yeah. I didn't remember that.
No, I heard the story. I was one of the kids. Okay. I was a kid listening.
Okay. That's right. It's been in the church.
Yeah, I didn't go there. But I heard about it.
You weren't even born.
I wasn't even born. But I listened to the story. Like I was sitting at my grandmother's table and like, grown folks conversation. Yeah, but I could listen.
And Mrs. Carter on Ridge Street, big white house. She made sandwiches for us. She made peanut butter and and bologna sandwiches. And they would go by her house and they would pick up those sandwiches and they would bring those lunches out to Camp Faith in Earlsville. But it was Mrs. Carter who did all those sandwiches every day for us. So, Camp Faith. Yeah.
Any other comments, questions, thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
I remember peanut. Those peanut beans. They had peanut.
That's a card game. Yeah, please do.
You mentioned in the video about the older man sitting on the porch of the big hand.
Yeah, Mr.
That was
Turtle.
my grandfather.
Oh, that's your grandfather.
That is so true. He was sitting on the porch and everybody knew him. Oh, hush your mouth up, baby. As he go by, but he did have big hands.
I remember, you were talking about the city of Promise when they came, the superintendent came to our house and was sitting on the porch. And he said, I want to tell you all that the Anderson Street, Piola, and West Street are going to be going to Venable next year. And I looked at him as an educator and I said, why not West Haven? And he said, hush, we're not talking about that now. And I said to him, no, my daughter, I have to fill my car with, you want parents involved with education. And every time we have to drive across town to Greenbrier and we have to fill our cars with our neighbors. So my husband drives his vehicle, I drive my vehicle so that these kids can be able to get an education within walking distance of the school system. And so I was kind of, as a employee of the Charlottesville City Schools, still watching what I said, but many years passed and he said to my husband, you have a tough old wife there that is not going to back down, because every time I would see him, I was like, So what have you heard about West Haven, including it? You know, and that was 25 years ago that it finally came to, you know, the children being able to attend Venable Elementary School versus driving 8 miles across school, you know, because I was like, this is, if you're going to call me a community, you've got to include everybody in the community. And, you know, it was kind of shocking to me when, you know, as my daughter turned 30 this year, that she couldn't go to the school that she lived, you know, within walking distance. But, you know, my thing was always, well, we can't cross 10th Street for the safety as we watched the elder get hit on 10th Street, you know, and so I was, you know, trying to do the prep work in advance. But, you know, I mean, I look at all the things that have changed, you know, since my husband and I've been married in that neighborhood, and just, you know, like the taxes, you know, the first year that our house burned and it, you know, our taxes went up almost $10,000. And then the next year, another $20,000, you know, and I was like, wow, what is happening? I said, you know, this is a new house. They should have gotten that straight when this house was built versus, you know, seeing that amount of increase in your amount of property tax that you're going to be paying. And I thought, this is ridiculous, you know, and I said to my husband last year, I said, if we go up another time and we've only been in this house 6 years, there's something seriously wrong with this issue. So, you know, we still have to look out for each other in all that we do. I mean, you know, we might not be at all the events, but we still need to, as a community, look around and make sure that, you know, we don't have as many elders as we used to have in the neighborhood. I mean, when I first moved there, everybody on the neighborhood was elder, you know, and, you know, we were the young folks in the neighborhood. And I remember some of those things growing up, but, you know, they instilled in us there that, you know, that you still had to have a fight. I mean, this room here, I worked in this building as well. And this room brings, I think when my aunt was teaching here as a librarian, she was a librarian in this room. And we just had a meeting here a couple of months ago, and it brings that feeling of the centeredness of, you know, you're centered here. And, you know, we have to keep these old historical buildings going and not let them fall to the wayside. And we have to be out here hunting and, you know, versus talking to our folks to tell them that there is something out there that you can go after, a grant or whatever. We still have to figure out those things to keep this progress going, not letting it just sit there and idle until it's not repairable. So,
Ms. Ange, I want to expand on just one comment you made. Thanks to Dr. Rosa Atkins, I was on the school board. It was then that she made the decision. Those kids who were living in Hardy Drive were going to them. And she said, I'm going to send a bus for what's the walking bus now. It's lost a lot of bus drivers. But it was Rosa Atkins who made that decision. And in conjunction worked with City of Promise to convince those parents to send their children so entrenched. And that came about in 1965, my last year at Jefferson School. The superintendent at that time decided that all children would go to their neighborhood schools, with the exception of those children who lived in Hardy Drive and Temple Page. So that was what it, so everyone else within us here at Jefferson. So what happened when I went to 6th grade, we were corralled from Hardy Drive, we walked from Hardy Drive all the way over to Guthrie School. The kids in Hardy Drive and Temple Page and Henry Avenue and Brooklyn neighborhood. So it was Dr. Atkins who made the decision, and then working with in conjunction with City of Promise. And now all those kids who live in Hardy Drive.
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, it took, you know, you look at look how many years it took.
You know, justice denied, justice whatever, but saying,
More often than University
Yeah.
long, but it bends towards justice.
Yeah, so we finally got out there, but think about it, we were supposed to it in 1965. But we were sent to Montgomery.
Yeah, I remember that. I used to tell them all the time, so I was like, listen, man, if you want parents to be more involved, then why you have them going to school on Long Street, all the way out on 250? How you gonna have parents involved in their children's education? I was like, well, it just doesn't make sense. And of course, Rosa, it didn't take long, once Rosa got things going and, you were on the school board, then it was the community effort. Even what you said, the fact that you voiced it made a difference in just doing common sense stuff. Like, you want the parents to be involved, but then, because I would have parents, they didn't have transportation sometimes to get all the way over to 250 from West End. Didn't make sense at all. So, I think we're at time, y'all. We could go on and on and on, but let's thank the panelists. Let's thank Andrea, of course, for being our host at the Heritage Center. Dr. Andrea Douglas. Give it up. Come on, Matthew and his team over at Virginia Humanities, and for the neighbors. Give it up for Matthew. There's some folks online. Josephine Morrison's family was online watching. So Jonah, gave his hello. So they were watching. Some folks were online. But I just want to thank you all, each and every one of you. I know just about everybody. Maybe a couple of you I don't know. But just thank everybody. They are taking photos in the back. If you're from the neighborhood, if you want a portrait taken, there's a photographer who's back there in the back. He'll be happy to take a photo if you want to. And I can't wait till the full project gets, over here to Jefferson School. I'm sure Joey Yeager here will have some work in that area, Andrea and team, but it's a lot. So it's hours and hours, and it's going to be here for historical preservation. So these stories need to be Yep.
So in September, we're going to open the next portion of our exhibition. Jordy's working hard at it every day. I'm sure he's working on it right now, actually. And what we're doing in that exhibition is really sort of thinking about the neighborhood. So we're going to talk about what will happen to these oral histories and where we need permission. We're going neighborhood by neighborhood. This will be our exhibition. And we're going to need all of you to say, how do you want that story told? This vignette is an amazing vignette, but it's a trailer. It's a taste of it. And so at some point, we're going to come to you and say, okay, we're ready to put this portion of the exhibition in. We want you to help us talk about what is these stories that you know about now that will best exemplify this really loving community that you've best described. So it may not be exactly in September, but it certainly will be before December. So look out for us. And when we call, please come. Thank you.
All right, last thing. A whole lot of chicken out there. You know how you get a plate on the bottom, put you a plate on the top, take you some chicken with it, okay? But thank you all. Thank you for having
Appreciate it, moderator. I mean, that's no. But if you want to do 20 minutes, New Spanish beautiful. Well, it'll be new. Yeah, it's like, but they're cool because they're two different things. One is like the actual, but one is the ING and the other is just it'll probably be it's not a bad you gotta work it out. Thank you. I'm Pat Cherry. Thank you. And then moving to the town, Mike could meet me all over dinner. So I was like, it's just be able to. But hey, unfortunately, the change is nothing, right? 10 minutes. You gotta have the script. You have to. One conversation. You gotta like. Anyway, what I do is I go in the elevator bus and say, "All right, it's college." And the door. Oh, I'm sorry. That's how we do. All right, we want to get in there close, like and like each other. And scooch over this way just a hair. Sorry about that. Yeah, you guys all right, here we go. Our party right here. Before it's just like, oh, that's cool. We should. I wonder if we should. How many can you? All right.
Seeing somebody in the role, yes, but you can inspire. And I didn't want.
Yes. Right. And all right. So let me. Let me get it in my notes. I just put first name. You guys, how are you? Should WARD? Still take the R. Sorry, I heard.
I'll go, I did. And so, yes.
I'm proud. Can I send this to you? How can I?